Welcome to Engaging and Empowering School Libraries, a podcast that aims to raise the profile of school libraries by talking about topics that are current across the education and teaching world. As always, I'm joined by my co-hosts and school librarians, Ruth Maloney and Sabrina Cox. Tonight, we're going to be talking again about ChatGPT and what it means for school librarians. I want to welcome back Domonic, Sunderland, head teacher of Capella House School, who joined me a few weeks ago on my last podcast about ChatGPT, and my other two guests who have got up rather early to talk to us from Australia, Andrew Herft, a curriculum advisor, and Leon Furze, an educational consultant. So I think what we should do is by starting just to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your interest in ChatGPT. Can I start with Andrew? You said something to me just before that was about, AI has been around for a while and ChatGPT has sort of exploded into the education world. I suppose that's the angle I'm sort of thinking about this evening. So tell me a little bit about your journey into ChatGPT, if you don't mind.
Sure. I guess my perspective has always been from a teacher's, perspective or a teacher's angle. I worked as a teacher for 15 years. For the past 6 years, I was head of teaching and learning, and now I'm a curriculum advisor. So my interest in AI has always been, learning focused and teacher focused in terms of saving time. But because there is so much out there, especially in the world of AI, I've always been interested but cautious because largely most of the AI either hasn't been comprehensive or broad enough for teacher accessibility. And so I think there's been some incredible AI programs along the way, but most of them are very niche in what they do and have only really been helpful for a small part of a teacher's role or for very specific teachers. So I guess when ChatGPT came along, it was broad enough to cater for a range of ideas and jobs that are within a teacher's reach. And, I think teachers really respond to prompting to get close to what they might like. So after a few experiments with it, I started to see the potential of how this one program could be used in schools to leverage learning.
It has been a fascinating turn of events, hasn't it? I suppose is that, 1 minute we're sort of using AI without really realizing it. It's sort of part of the background. One of the conversations I had with Domonic last time is the fact that, we have been using AI for a while, but this seems a little bit different, doesn't it? This seems usable and doable, and I think that's the exciting bit. Domonic, can I bring you in and just can you reintroduce yourself? I hope you're well. Had a good couple of weeks at school. But how's your journey with ChatGPT changed in the last couple of weeks since we spoke?
No, I'm head of a special school in Southwest London. And my background is I teach computer science. So I suppose that's kind of why I've always kept my eye on education and the tech space, because I think, as I said previously, I think schools are notoriously quite far behind in technology and the way we teach technology and the way we use it. How's it changed for me in the last few weeks? The biggest issue, I think, staff getting frustrated now with not being able to always access it. It's been the biggest change.
Yeah.
Which is great that I've got my whole staff team on board, but it's becoming increasingly more difficult to actually just use it. And that's, for me, a big worry, is because people aren't able to access it and use it quickly. They soon get bored and just resort back to their old ways.
Absolutely. I think that there's talk, isn't there, about making it behind sort of a paid version, which would mean that people who have paid should be able to access it, but we'll see how that goes in the future, I suppose. But you're right, the more you can't use it, the more frustrating, and you'll just give up, won't you? So there are hurdles yet to still manage, aren't there? And finally, Leon, again, somebody who's got some ridiculous hour in the morning to come and speak to us. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your interest in ChatGPT, please?
Yeah, it sounds like my background's quite similar to Andrew's, actually. So I also taught for 15 years and was a learning and teaching coordinator and head of English. And I've always had a bit of an English and literature background. And then last year I started my PhD in artificial intelligence and writing. So AI education and a focus on writing instruction, about 2 weeks before ChatGPT came out, which was either really good timing or really bad timing, depending on who you ask. And obviously, I'm quite invested now in that kind of generative AI space. So really, my main interest is looking at how teachers and educators think of these technologies, what they understand about them. I'm quite deep into some of the ethical concerns behind the technologies, but I'm also a big fan of using the technology. So just balancing that, the incredible kind of usefulness against some of the really pretty problematic aspects of the industry.
It's the ethical side of it is something that really does interest us as school librarians or as librarians. There's a real opportunity, I think, for other professionals to use their skill set that can broaden the sense of what this tool can do, which I think is quite exciting. Now, obviously, tonight our discussion is trying to sort of work out, for those that are listening, usually they're school librarians or people who are interested in school libraries. I'm going to tap your knowledge in the fact that you work with teachers, and understand what their needs are. So is there a simple answer to ways that school librarians can help teachers and students use ChatGPT effectively, especially if teachers don't have time or haven't yet registered? So one of the problems for me is that I've been telling people how exciting it is, and then they haven't been able to register. So that's a frustration. Is there anything that school librarians could do in order to excite them or get them ready for what might be coming, do you think? Andrew, let's start with you.
Yeah, I don't think we need to be too too complicated about it, I guess. Treat it like any other educational tool. So there's two things that I immediately think of: is you link to prior knowledge, link to prior experience, and show illustrations of practice. I think the really nice thing with ChatGPT is that it provides a very quick before and after snapshot, because it is just so quick. So finding things that tie in with subject specific work that teachers might know, or pedagogy that teachers know, and even looking at particular meta language that is within the school context, or that is being driven in the school context, and then just using that with ChatGPT. It is so accessible for it to develop a conversation around those protocols. So it's quickly seeing before and after snapshots, showing clear illustrations of practice, and seeing, I guess, what teachers and students are doing currently in a new light, and seeing how ChatGPT connects the dots. So yeah, I feel like treat it like any other educational tool, where you would link it to current processes and current language.
Absolutely. Leon, what about the critical thinking side of ChatGPT? That obviously school librarians teach all sorts of different kind of skills, research skills, and obviously critical thinking is a big part of that. Do you think ChatGPT is a tool that can be used within the classroom?
I think critically is the key word. Obviously, at the moment, it doesn't have that ground truth. It doesn't have the backup there. There are other AI apps already, Perplexity and You, and Google's got its own chatbot coming out soon that may have that kind of truth baked into them. But I think we still need to be critical of where the source information is coming from and what kind of information it's presenting, and not just taking everything at face value. Andrew, it's probably the same over the border in New South Wales, but we've got a huge teacher shortage in Australia, and particularly we have no digital technologies teachers. So often our library staff are the technology experts in schools. So you mentioned research skills. Often those kinds of research skills and academic integrity and things like that are delivered through courses within the library in many schools, in my experience in Australia, and I'm sure it's the same over there. So I think it's the perfect place to be delivering those kinds of skills and capabilities.
Absolutely. It's trying to get that taking that first step, isn't it? So for a school librarian out there that's maybe not got onto it yet, there's that element of, okay, how do I deal with it? What do I do? What does it do? And I suppose it is just an exploration of what you do and teach anyway, just trying it out in a different technology, in a different format, which I think is quite exciting, isn't it, really?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Go on, sorry. No, okay. So what ways do you think school librarians can play in integrating ChatGPT into the curriculum and maximising the potential benefits for students? Now, when I wrote that question down, I wasn't necessarily aware of the fact that it's supposed to be for over 18s only, although we know, don't we, that under 18s are likely to be using it. What do you think, Domonic, is the best way for us to maximize the potential benefits for students?
I think it's kind of what the other guy said there. For me, the most important thing is teaching students to be discerning with the information, and really use it as a tool to help enhance the curriculum as it is, because a good curriculum should be teaching students to be critical thinkers, to analyze information, to challenge what's been said to them. That's been the way since education first became part of a modern successful society, and it's no different now. And I think, especially speaking from a UK standpoint, you guys probably got a similar situation. The staff shortages, the curriculum's already crammed and really, really busy. It's often competing for space, and I think people like school librarians, they have a key role in making sure teachers have the time, or supporting teachers in teaching those critical thinking skills, the challenging misinformation. I'm talking about the limitations involved in it, and just using it as a way of enhancing what's already there. Because I don't think it's actually anything different from what's in the curriculum. It's just a different way of approaching it.
Yeah, so there was a lot of scary moments at the beginning of the year where people were talking about, plagiarized essays and that kind of thing, and those kind of conversations seem to have, they're still rumbling in the background, but they're not as big as it was initially at the beginning of January. And I do like the fact that ChatGPT isn't always right. It gives us the opportunity to point out and highlight the problems that it does have. But it's likely to get cleverer, isn't it? Do you think, Domonic?
Clever, it's really difficult to describe, like artificial intelligence getting more clever or intelligent. It's tricky, but I think it will get better, but I still think the misinformation will be there. Even but some of the best uses I've seen used by one of my teachers is an English teacher, and she used it to generate a piece of writing, and then the pupils actually looked at it collectively and were able to analyze it. And she didn't say it was generated by AI, it was just looking at a piece of writing, and then afterwards they just spoke about it being AI. But it was just really interesting to see how to critically analyze something, no matter if it's generated or not by AI. And I think that will never go away. Even if it gets better and putting more answers, it's still only be as good as the information you put into it. And again, it comes back to that skill of being able to question and to give it information to gain a response. I think it's the key part for any AI tool. Absolutely.
So it's remembering that in order to get something out, the human has to put something in the first place, and that is a thought process, isn't it? It's that element that, I seem to remember, and I think I might have said this in our last conversation, Domonic, that actually that people were worried that robots were going to take over everybody's job, and those kind of conversations are happening again, aren't they? And I think there are opportunities to be more creative potentially with something like AI. Do you agree there, Andrew?
Yeah, this is all great. This is exactly what I've been hoping that people, I guess, would steer towards. But yeah, look, I think its inaccuracy is its learning enhancer. It forces everyone to think, and if we really go down that route with students in terms of looking at it with a critical eye, looking at everything it outputs with a critical eye, then we're constantly in that space. It's such a wonderful opportunity to encourage students to constantly question, to constantly look at validity, to constantly look at relevance. It's just such an opportunity to keep students and teachers in that space. And look, yeah, I love the idea of worked examples and deconstructing, because I think, as Sabrina said there, it's about the skills, writing. If we look at writing as an output of knowledge, then sure, I'm sure ChatGPT could do it well. But as we know, writing is a skill, and or the art of writing, everything is an art. And so you can very easily build formative processes and find personal voice within that. Now, ChatGPT can help us get there quicker, or maybe make us more creative in the decisions that we make and connect those dots quicker. But still, we can still manage to keep developing the skills and the art of our subjects. So yeah, no, for me, it's a really exciting space, and I think there is still an opportunity. I had, the output that it does provide us is still very straightforward, and I don't think students are sort of prompt savvy yet. One of my friends, as a PDHP teacher, he received a work sample from a student, which was, very easy, I guess, to identify that it was artificial intelligence, mainly because it was very shopping list, very, factual statements, short factual statements. But mostly the teacher knew how that student wrote, so, both in the same sentence of like, yeah, AI is easy currently to identify. But if a teacher knows their students and how those students write through formative assessments and through tracking, then yeah, it's still going to be more of a conversation of how teachers are assessing rather than what ChatGPT can do to, I guess, ruin those assessments.
I think one of the things that I found, because I'm a blogger, and what one of the big things was, you could get it to write your outline, and then it writes your outline, and then you think to yourself, okay, well, I need that little bit explained a little bit more. And what I found was it was very difficult to then think to myself, I need to write this in my own words, because it sounded great, but actually it's not my words and it's not me. And I almost had to, after reading it, put it to one side and actually start again on my own. But that in itself is this, students have been, or we've been trying to teach students that for donkey's years. They go onto the internet and they cut and paste something and they take it and it's so they still haven't quite worked out themselves how to, rewrite something in their own words. So, I think we have skills that we do need to learn to teach better in order to be able to use it properly. Do you think that that's right, Domonic?
Yeah, I do. I was just thinking, as Andrew and yourself were talking there, I think that one of the big, how it can help revolutionize education almost is that it can change the way we look at assessing pupils, because we're still stuck in the system where we ask exam questions. One of what I thought of straight away when you guys were talking there is the classic English literature one, is where it asks a student to analyze an author's voice or to draw on that. And like using AI to do that can actually be a useful tool in helping it to understand more about author voice and maybe where author's voice is missing. But I just think it can just change the way we assess students and like assess what we're looking for, because even for someone that goes on, by the time someone goes on to study like A-level literature or do their degree in English literature, they've already got their voice. Their voice is already developed. So you don't need to teach them the voice anymore. So again, it could be looking at how we are assessing a student's understanding of appreciating literature or analyze. It always comes back to analysis or perception or how they interpret it. And that's where I can be really, really useful in teaching those skills again. I think it always comes back to the analysis and the thinking is the key part of it all.
But do you think that this new prompt. I don't think the word prompt has been used so much in the last 6 weeks or so as it's ever been used. And obviously prompt now means something that you're going to write into ChatGPT. That in itself is a skill, because actually the initial question, like Andrew was saying, the student coming back with something fairly basic, we are going to have to, as school librarians and teachers, going to have to learn what the prompt and the next question is likely to be. And I think that's probably easier for a teacher within a subject, because you're embedded into that subject, and in a classroom setting, presumably you would be prompting your students to give you a better, fuller answer. This skill of prompting, is it based on background knowledge? Is it based on what it gives you? So therefore you need to think about how it's not quite created what you're looking for properly. I think there's a big conversation to be had around prompting. Andrew, what do you think? What do you reckon about the prompting?
Yeah, so again, I think this is just such an opportunity. The one thing that we want to do in education is to get students to ask questions of themselves, to be great questioners. And so this forces that hand, if they want great information, or if they want, I guess a shortcut to whatever, they need to become better questioners. And so this flexes or this trains that muscle. I'm always encouraging students to ask questions and become better questioners. What is a prompt? A prompt is essentially a question, right? So developing that skill of questioning, I think, is a real opportunity, and something that we can really make a significant part of the conversation when students learn, and especially, use this tool in ChatGPT. So regardless of prompting, I think it's more about being better questioners, and understanding what makes up a question, and then how that can relate to their needs.
Absolutely. Perfect. And as far as school librarians is concerned, questioning is a great one. Love it. Domonic, can I bring you back in?
Yeah, so Sabrina made a comment there about Google and students not being that skilled at using Google. And I think actually it comes back, like what Andrew was just saying about questioning there, is that Google has kind of muted or limited some students' questioning skills, because Google by default, you can just type in a string of words or 2 or 3 words and get a response. So students now, that's a shortcut for getting the answer. Whereas AI, ChatGPT, Midjourney, you have to be more refined in your questioning. So again, it comes back to the skill of questioning. Teachers, we're going to have to be, and librarians are really going to have to be really explicit in teaching pupils the different types of questions. Again, something that probably is more apparent in humanities and subjects like that. But again, all subjects are going to have to be really skilled at teaching the skill of questioning. In fact, I can see questioning becoming a big part of the curriculum again. And
I'm very proud to say that not too long ago I did a webinar training session on creating a good question. So I'm obviously in the right direction. We need to make sure that we pull that together though, and include. So when I'm thinking about questioning, I'm thinking about the fact that we are creating an inquiry that is, and unless you have that brilliant question at the top of it, it then means that the responses you get from the students and their questions is generally poorer. So I think to have a tool that actually allows you to enhance your questioning is quite crucial. One of the things though that you said is that if we talk about the fact that students who don't all have access to the internet at home, and from diverse backgrounds, obviously we need to be able to let them use ChatGPT within a school environment if they can't do it from home. Is there any way that we can make this? I don't think we can actually. I'm asking the question, and I'm asking it about the fact that students at home who don't have access to the internet, are in a difficult position anyway. Do you think that that's enhanced by the fact that ChatGPT is on the scene? Can I bring Leon into that? Hello, welcome back.
And you just mentioned access to the internet, and I live on a farm, so I'm in rural southwest Victoria, and we're on a satellite broadband connection. We just had a little brownout then, a bit of a power cut. So that killed all of the internet because we have no mobile phone service out here, and it's the same for a lot of our students. So during lockdown, and we had extensive lockdowns here in Victoria, we had swathes of students out in the regional areas who just couldn't access a stable internet connection. So, you know, Victoria has been the next state to block ChatGPT in schools, in state schools. So the independent schools and the Catholic schools still have it unblocked. So there's definitely an equity of access issue there. I mean, you mentioned the terms and conditions problem earlier, Elizabeth, and I think that's being used as the defining point in the argument for a lot of the sectors at the moment. But look, these technologies, they'll be integrated into Office products, integrated into Bing. Google, as you've I think just mentioned, is going to bring its own chatbot out probably within the next couple of weeks. I think they're due to do an announcement at some point today, California time. And, you know, there will be no blocking it in schools. So I think it's really imperative on educators across the board to help bring these technologies in with that critical mindset, with that ethical mindset, because students will be using them. You know, so whether ChatGPT is blocked in schools at the moment, or whether students have problematic internet access outside of school, I think it's kind of on us to make sure that we're using these technologies properly in schools.
Yeah, and the chances are, if businesses are not using it already, they will be. So we need to make sure that our students are au fait enough with it to be able to be going into whatever business it is and be able to manage it. Funnily enough, my youngest son is working in a creative company, and they're not sure about it. They're quite nervous about it, and you know, I think there's going to be different bands, isn't there? There's going to be people that are already hot on it and already using it and are making great headway, and others that are more traditional going to go, no, we're not going to do it that way. You know, I think, how long do you think it will be before it is commonplace for AI to be used within a work environment, beyond obviously education? Andrew, what do you think? Is it something that's already out there? Is my understanding of what is happening out in the business world wrong, or is my son's experience with it right, do you think?
That's a hard question. It's a hard question. Look, I think as we know with any technology, or the technology industry, it's exponential. So I think, as Leon was saying, it's going to form part of our world very quickly with a lot of the major tech companies taking it on board. But in terms of uptake, it's really about accessibility, and it's really about experimenting and mass amount of users starting to get on board with it, because we won't really know its potential until we have a lot of people using it. Really, in terms of the education world, it's still in its infancy. We've only really had 2 or 3 months with it, which is outstanding, really, like that we've had such onboarding, or that ChatGPT has had such an onboarding. So yeah, I think in 6 months' time, we might not even be talking about ChatGPT. I'm sure there'll be, as Leon was saying, other iterations of this type of technology. But I for sure think that it's going to be part of a person's world as they leave the school environment. I think it has so many benefits to businesses and to the economy. So yeah, I think it's definitely going to be part of it. When that happens, who's to know? But I do know that technology is exponential, so perhaps sooner rather than later. Absolutely.
So Domonic, let me bring you back in. If we're talking about teachers using it and teaching with it. Are you currently seeing ChatGPT on any lesson plans, or is it still a step away from that?
Not really seen on lesson plans, but that may be more to do with our school. I'm not big on just getting people to plan for planning's sake.
No.
But I'm definitely seeing more use of questioning, and again, teachers being more creative in thinking how they approach a subject. So using it for prompts, how they teach a prompt. In science, for example, there's been some really good use of it. I've seen with how teachers are actually asking the question, seeing what response they're getting, and then modeling that sort of like as a shared or guided learning experience for pupils. I think the biggest thing I've seen is teachers using it to cut down on their admin tasks rather than just curriculum-based things. And again, I think that's really important, particularly in the UK, for teaching recruitment issues and well-being being a priority. I think it can be a great tool to support teachers' workload and work-life balance, because actually if you can automate lots of your processes, because in schools we do spend a lot of time on admin heavy tasks, it can really help. But no, not on lesson plans as such as yet, but I'm definitely seeing it used by teachers to be creative in their lessons. A good example again in science was they asked ChatGPT to give them a practical activity based on teaching chromosomes, and it came with a great task using paper clips, and the teacher's like, I would never have thought of that, I've never heard of this. So it's got lots of potential there. So I think, again, it's the word in the staff room spreads better than just having it added onto a lesson plan.
And do you think that generally speaking that it is, teachers are accepting it positively?
Yeah, definitely. Anything that can reduce workload or give them ideas when they're tired at the end of the day, or suddenly got to cover a lesson and they can just type something in and then get a response back, even if the quality may not be great or they may not have the time to critically analyze it. I think they're going to be happy with that.
Absolutely. So how should schools that aren't convinced? So we do have schools that are blocking it. Not in the UK yet, I don't think. But if schools are unsure, what do you think we should be saying to them to try and convince them to embrace it in a positive manner despite its inaccuracies? But maybe it's the inaccuracies that are a positive thing. What do you think, Leon?
Yeah, I think that we need to reframe in Australia that conversation around banning and blocking. I mean, that there is an argument for putting the brakes on a technology that is such an unknown and that is developing so rapidly. Using that 18-year-old terms and conditions is probably a little bit of a cop out. But I think if schools are going to be wary of the technology, they need to be still comfortable with grappling with it and its implications. I don't want to be kind of techno-deterministic and say, it's going to take over the world and it's inevitable and we can't stop this from happening. But the technology is already here and it's already being used in industry. Sort of coming back to your question earlier, it's massively in use across marketing, across copywriting, across any industries which are already fairly text heavy. And I think from that point of view, we need to acknowledge that it's here, and our students are either already using it or they will be using it very soon. The other thing is, once this generative AI is integrated into Office products and Google products, we'll stop calling it AI and it will just be part of the furniture. So, it's again, without wanting to sound too deterministic about it, it's coming. And I think for schools who are leery of bringing it into their curriculums, we just need an acceptance of the fact that this is just one of those things that we need to teach students about.
Absolutely. Ruth's got her hand up. Do you want to come in and ask a question?
Hi, yeah. Sorry, this may have been covered. I had to go out and lost you all and come back, but it seems like it might be on a point to address it otherwise. I'm interested thinking about how this kind of technology is actually going to change the way we try and educate our children. I don't know what your exams are like in Australia, but I would imagine they're quite similar to ours and very memory-based and reliant on the students learning facts. And it seems to me that while I've long thought that was deeply outdated, this is a time at which that we might be forced as a society to really rethink the way we educate children. I know this is like way beyond the librarian's remit, but actually it's, it's kind of playing into what we as librarians do, and that the idea that learning is about inquiry and about thinking rather than about absorbing knowledge. And ChatGPT is the embodiment of that technologically, and it feels to me as though it's doing something for us, Elizabeth, that we have to do for years and years. I'm just interested to hear whether you three think that it really has that potential to change our education system that fundamentally.
Let's go with Domonic.
Yeah, I definitely think it does. I think this is going to be a kind of a watershed moment. And like I was saying to the guys earlier, that our exam system, I agree, is totally outdated. It's not assessing our pupils for the right skills, definitely not for the modern world. And I think if schools can adopt it early, and I think it's inevitable that we will have to adopt it, but I think it's a real chance that we can, teachers and head teachers, we often say that we want change, we're not happy with the curriculum, it needs refreshing, and this is a chance to kind of grab it and to start the process.
Absolutely. What about Andrew? What do you think?
Yeah, it's part of the conversation of us shifting from knowledge to skills, and being able to wield tools to be able to get to where we need to. So yeah, for sure, I think it's a really great opportunity to actually enact change. Yeah, I think a lot of teachers and educators have been, I guess, quietly, some not so quietly, about how we assess, and rightly so. So I think finally there's something that can really propel that conversation around what we're actually assessing and what we actually want to find out about a student's learning. It's
interesting because in Australia, inquiry-based learning is more common, I think, than in the UK. Would you say that because of that, they're probably a little bit ahead?
I mean, in terms of using AI, and maybe not so, but in terms of inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, and definitely the conversation has around formative assessment has been much more pertinent in I guess New South Wales education, at least. So yeah, I think we've always been traveling towards this idea of formative, and yeah, I guess this is just going to propel that conversation and really get us to consider what summative assessments we really want to have at the end of years.
Absolutely. It is going to be a fascinating journey. One of the things that Domonic and I were discussing the last time was the fact that any new technology that comes into school, there's usually a big burst of let's all use it, and very little training and very little opportunity to learn. And in our last discussion, it feels like ChatGPT is slightly different from other technologies in the fact that it's not an iPad that you have to learn how to point and use apps and things. It's one thing. Do you think because of that, it is going to make greater inroads? Leon, what do you think?
Yeah, look, there's a really low bar to entry with ChatGPT. It's so easy to start getting in and playing around. And already I've seen so much professional development. I mean, with my consultant hat on, when I'm not being a student, I'm running heaps of professional development in schools that are just kind of tapping me on the shoulder saying, hey, can you just come in and show us just for half an hour how to drive this thing? And then once you show people, they're away. I'm really keeping a close eye on what's happening over the border in South Australia, because they are really leading the way here in terms of the states. They haven't blocked it in that state. And the universities there are really romping away with this. So they're running this, huge 4-hour-long seminar on the weekend for teachers and educators from secondary through to tertiary, just really kind of churning out materials and resources and help. And it's now expanding beyond ChatGPT. So whilst there will be a little bit of ChatGPT in that weekend seminar, there's a lot of things in there around image generation, generative AI more broadly, other forms of AI, and a mixture of how to adopt the technology and how to be critical. There's there's an academic over here, Neil Selwyn, who writes a lot about technologies, and he's often expresses his disappointment with edtech, which is, I think, something that we all feel. There is that big rush to adopt in education when there's a new technology that might help with, as Dominic said earlier, the workload or those kinds of issues. And when we had remote learning, there was this huge influx of edtech. And often it falls a bit flat. It doesn't do exactly what we want it to do, or it's got too hard a learning curve. It's hard to adopt. This feels like something totally different. And one thing that Neil Selwyn says, which I agree with, is that with AI, teachers we need to grab a hold of this and we need to make it our own. We can't afford to let the edtech companies kind of tell us how to use it or tell us what to do with it or develop apps for us. We need to be the ones driving this kind of new round of technology.
Do you think then that it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think if there had been previous training on AI for education, there wouldn't, you correct me if I'm wrong, but there wouldn't necessarily have been such an interest. But because ChatGPT has become such a big thing, that actually we can now have broader conversations about how AI can be used within education. Do you think that ChatGPT has enabled that to happen? Andrew?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Leon then. Yeah, go on then. No.
Oh, no, look, I was just, I think Dominic said earlier that ChatGPT is a bit of a watershed moment, or that this conversation around AI is the watershed. And I would definitely agree with that. Just the narrative in the media around ChatGPT has, it's something else entirely.
Yeah. Andrew, do you want to come in and just, what do you think?
Yeah, completely agree. As Leon said before, it's such a low bar of accessibility. You can start, very basic, and then start to build on those prompts really easily to get something close to what you want. I think in terms of, if AI was more in the conversation before, it's hard because AI was so built into the programs that we were using that it wasn't really a seen thing. And if it was a seen thing, then it was very niche and very particular. So yeah, I think ChatGPT very much has the breadth and a little bit of the depth that we need as teachers specifically to hone in on the skills that we want to develop.
Absolutely. So if we are talking to groups of school librarians here, what would be the main skill that you I think already we've talked about questions, haven't we? Is that what you think is the main thing that we should be looking at? I'm going to bring Dominic in first.
Yeah, I think the questions is one of the main skills. What I was going to say there is like what the point Andrew made. I think AI has been around for a while, but it's been there by stealth. It's just kind of been integrated into how we use things. So spell checks and predictive text or smart compose. But what I think, link it back to your question, Elizabeth, is for librarians, I think, is use it as a way to engage and excite. And that's the reason why there's such a zeitgeist around it at the moment, is because it's exciting and people are really hooked onto it. And it's the same way we would do for any lesson we teach to students. We want them engaged and hooked and excited about the learning. And I think that's something that librarians can really do, is really showcase it and not shy away from it, and just really go headlong into it and make it fun and say, wow, have you seen what this can do? This is amazing. And just really capitalize on that.
It's about that time factor, isn't it? Is that possibly a teacher doesn't have the time to find time to play with it, I suppose, is the opportunity for the school librarian, having been able to tell a few teachers that it can help generate lesson plans, has put a few smiles on people's faces, and it's that kind of thing, isn't it? I do think we have an opportunity to ensure that collaboration between teachers and school librarians is a priority with something like this, and I'm really excited about where it might lead and might go. I'm going to bring this conversation to a stop. I've noticed that it's nearly 10 to 8. So I just want to before I ask my last question, I'm just going to take my opportunity to promote my membership to any schools who are looking for ways to boost independent learning, literacy and well-being through your school library. If you're not sure how to make this happen, my membership program offers training and support for school librarians and teachers and creates opportunities to engage across the curriculum. You can find out more in the information in the link in the show notes below. So I want to finish with one last question for all of you. What would be, we almost touched on it with Domonic before I did my promotion, but what would be your message to any school librarian listening who hasn't yet started on their ChatGPT adventure to get them going, rushing off to sign up? What would you say, Leon?
Just get in and start seeing what it can do. You know, I think Andrew mentioned this earlier, but it's such a quick turnaround on typing in the prompt to seeing the results that I'm yet to see anyone who's genuinely got in there, tried it, played around, who hasn't been suitably impressed with the technology. So it is an impressive technology, sometimes scarily so. And I think if you haven't signed up yet, you should really just have a crack.
Thank you. And what about you, Andrew? What would you say?
Yeah, have a crack. It's one of those things. You just really won't know the extent of how it can help you or save time or enhance learning until you actually try it for yourself. So, you know, you can have people showing you the before and after illustrations, you know, till the cows come home. But until you try it yourself and apply it to your own context, you won't really know. It's really all about starting. And, you know, that's up to school leaders to provide some professional support around that and provide time in schools, because, you know, if they feel like it is genuinely going to save time for their teachers and enhance learning, then it, you know, deserves time for their teachers to play around with it. So, it's very much about giving it a go and seeing how it can suit your context and your needs.
Perfect. Thank you. And Domonic, do you have a final word to say?
Yeah, I think exactly. So get stuck in, but in a practical sense, it's kind of what I said to teachers, but I'd say to librarians too, is take one thing off your to-do list, look at your to-do list and try one thing in ChatGPT and then see how that works. Because I think if you can do that and you can then see yourself that it saved you a bit of time, you're not going to look back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what I'm going to take from tonight's chat is the fact that I need to include ChatGPT or AI into my next creating a good question session that I do, because I think it's certainly something that we need to make sure that we include in our sessions more going forward, regardless of what it is that we're trying to teach or train, because I think it's going to be part of it. It's going to be out there, as it is out there, isn't it? So thank you so much for giving me your time tonight, Andrew, Domonic and Leon. It's really been interesting to chat with you. I hope that we have managed to persuade some people that ChatGPT and AI is not that scary after all, and it can be worth exploring. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future discussions. Thank you for listening, and good night.